get started, people still might stagger in. Welcome back. Most of you have been here at least once this week, so welcome back to the third day of our second annual Research Clue Series. And actually, before I get started, this is an annual Clue Series that I would like to continue to do every year. So if you have ideas for research topics that you would like me to cover in future years, just send me an email, and I would be happy to put together a Clue and cover them during this series during Law Week in future years. For those of you that haven't been here the past couple days, if you sign in up there, I will send you a Clue certificate later today, or actually it may end up being tomorrow morning. And there's some handouts up there. There's also a couple of handouts, flyers about other Clue opportunities. Next week is Indian Law Week, and there are free Clue opportunities Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday next week. There is an all-day long Clue on Thursday. There's also a little postcard about our summer Indian law program, and the courses there are week-long courses that are available for 15 Clue credits each. They're not free, but if you're interested in those topics, then I encourage you to pick up one of those and consider coming to that. Today's topic is legislative research and legislative history research. We'll talk both about researching what's going on currently in the legislature, and then we'll also talk about how you get some legislative history information for Montana statutes. Today is the 70th day of the current session. Our sessions run for 90 days, so if this session goes the full 90 days, it will end May 1st. I heard a rumor this morning that they may finish as much as a week early, but you never know what's going to happen. They may not. But that's where we are at. This chart, which is not the most beautiful report ever, but this gives you an idea, and I handed it out in print. This gives you an idea of what the legislature has done so far. At this point, 1,166 bills have been introduced, and of course, this late in the game, no more will be introduced. And 189 of those have become law. It looks like about 450 of them are, 450, probably more like over 500 are dead at this point, and there's still, if I can do my math in my head, I probably shouldn't do that, about 300 that are still active that they will be still considering in the next 20 days. So the question then is, how do we research some of these? In Montana, all of the laws that are passed become effective on October 1st unless there is another effective date specified in the bill. And that is often the case. Often a bill will say that it's effective July 1st or it's effective immediately. Some bills have immediate effective dates. Some bills may have like a January 1st effective date if for some reason it needs to be put off past October 1st. The new code won't be published until, well, it's usually the end of September, but technically it is published in October. But that gives us a gap from now, essentially, until October 1st. And how do we find out what those laws that were passed are? So that's a little bit what we're going to talk about today. Just also to kind of give you another idea, this is as of about half an hour ago. This report is updated frequently. Everything in chronological order that has passed so far. You can see it's just 12 pages long, and you can and I'll show you how to get these reports later on. You can just scan through and see the different things that that have passed, just if you're interested. The other report that I want to start with, whoops, wrong one. Here we go. This is the other handout I gave you. This is where we're going to start doing our research. This is the report of all of the code sections that have been affected by laws that have been passed in this section, or that still may be affected by bills that are still ongoing. So we can see that 1-1-411 has been amended. There were several sections in Title I, Chapter 5 that have been repealed. and you can go through. The reason I gave you the report actually is so that you can, I gave you the report so that you kind of have an idea at this point. If you're interested in particular sections, you can look at those. And actually, I should back up a second, correct myself. Those sections in 1-5-401 have not yet been repealed, but if that bill passes, Senate Bill 306 passes, then they will be repealed. And I will show you how I knew that. Looking down, well here, let me raise it up a little bit. We look here in the middle of the page now. See how this bill 306, Senate Bill 306.01 is just 0.01, but this next one, House Bill 315, has the enrolled, the ENR extension after it. That means the enrolled means this bill has been passed, is a law, Secretary of State has it. This 01 means that actually that's a draft number. It's just the first draft of that. When it does pass, then the version number will be ENR. So that's how I could tell that one hadn't passed yet. So you can kind of go through here and see. So if there's any particular statutes that you use a lot, that you're interested in, you might want to just kind of glance through this list and see if they've already been changed, or if they will be changed within the next couple weeks potentially. So to do our research, I want to start with a statute, a criminal law statute in Title 45. Where is it? Oops, that's 41. 45, here we go. Particularly, I'm interested in this group of statutes right here. Whoops, not all of them. This group of statutes right here. 45.5, 305, 306, 310, and 311. So I went through this list and realized, oh, these are important statutes to my work or whatever, and it looks like they might potentially be repealed. So I want to find out what the status of this bill is right now, what the repeal might be, what is the deal, what's going on with these particular statutes. These just by way of reference, we're actually going to look at one of them later, but these are in the kidnapping chapter, but these are basically the trafficking statutes in Montana. So there's a human trafficking bill that will affect these statutes. The piece of information that I need from this report is that it is House Bill 89 that I'm concerned with. And armed with that piece of information, I am now going to go online to the legislature's website. And I'm going to start actually with our website just to kind of get you oriented and to show you some links. First of all, our library blog handily has a blog right now about tracking legislative activity that Phil wrote. Most of what, or maybe even all of what, I am going to say today, you will find repeated here in this blog. If you're interested, our library blog covers, often covers research issues, legal research issues, or issues of interest to legal researchers. If you want to follow it, I'm already following it, but there's usually oh look, you can click on this, follow our blog. If you want to follow it, and then every week when we post, you'll get an email with a new research topic. But I wanted to point this one out particularly because it's about tracking legislative activity. Okay, so I'm going to go back. On our website, under Montana Legal Research, there is a link to the legislature. And actually, the URL is easy. It's just leg.mt.gov. So you go there a couple times and you've memorized it after that. But this is the website that you are going to need for anything legislative. And we'll actually go through several different parts of this website throughout the hour today. But right now, I saw that statute was changed. I saw there could be repealed. I saw that House Bill 89 affects it. And so I want to look up House Bill 89 and see what's going on with House Bill 89. I'm going to start with this nice box in the middle for legislative session. And we'll actually also come back to some things on this page. But for right now, I want this laws database. The laws database is where all of the status of the bills, all the bill information, everything about the bills is all kept here. Particularly because I don't yet know very much, I'm just going to look up the bill. And I had my bill number. Sometimes you'll get your bill numbers, you'll find them in newspaper stories, you'll hear them on the news. They have on public radio, there's the daily legislative wrap-up, and you hear bill numbers. So however you get your bill number, all you have to do is enter it, click on find, and you will get your bill status report.
Stacy?
Yeah.
Can I back up
Of
just for a
course.
second? Where does this thing come from?
So I will show you that. I printed it. I'll just...
Okay. It come from that website?
It does come from the website, yeah. And both of those reports actually came, and several others, so I want to show you all of the reports that you can get, so I will show you that. Okay, so this bill, at the top you'll just find general information about the bill number, and who the sponsor was, the short title. And this is also where you get the text of the bill. And I'm just going to click on the PDF, and here I get the full text of the bill itself. This 03 here tells me that this is actually the third version of this bill, so it's been amended a couple of times since it was introduced. Most likely it was amended in committee, I think. And I scroll through, and so you can see a couple of things in this bill. We're going to come back to mention this, but it adds some new sections to the code. They don't have numbers yet because the bill hasn't passed yet, but it does add entirely new sections to our code. And also, you can tell from the top, from the title, bills have long titles, repeals some sections and amends some sections as well. I'm going to skip down to the bottom of this particular bill because, oops, I just thought you needed to see puppies briefly. Notice at the bottom, and the effective date is always at the bottom, this bill has a July 1st effective date. So this is one of those ones that is going to go into effect before the new code is published. So we might need to find out about it using all this, what we're doing today. So that's the bill information and the bill itself. As it exists right now. It could, since it is still in play, it could actually be amended more as it goes throughout the process. Let's look at this bill action chart. This is the bill status, and it goes in reverse chronological order. So the most current thing that happened to the bill is at the top. And the most current thing that happened with this particular bill is there was a hearing in the Senate Judiciary Committee on March 31st. You can go through and see, and if you go, actually if I scroll down to the bottom, you can see this bill's actually it was introduced even before the session started. It was early referred to the House Judiciary Committee. They had a hearing on it. They voted it out. And along the way, you can also see, this bill has pretty strong support, very strong support. You can also see all of the votes. Everywhere there was a vote, if I actually click on these numbers, I will get the vote tabulation. So I can see how this was the vote in the full House. So I can see how each of the representatives voted on the bill. Okay, oops. Let me go back. If what I want to find out, what I've read the text of the bill, so I see how it might affect the laws. But if what I'm interested in at this point is some of the discussions that are going on in the legislature, I want to know why they're thinking of changing things, why they've amended it, all of that. There's nothing written, but all of the hearings and the debate on the House and Senate floor are recorded. And all of the committees have at least audio. Some of the committees also have video. It depends which committee room they're in. Not all of the rooms have video capabilities, but many you'll have the opportunity to either look at video or audio. it's a little bit tempting to think that I should be able to click on this hearing link here and jump right to the hearing. That's not true. You'll end up going in a circle and ending up right back here. But at the top, there is a link that says all available audio and video for this bill. So if I click on that link, I'm going to have to scroll down a little bit. Now, what I get are links, and this is a committee that has both audio and video, are links to all of the discussions, whether they were in committee or whether they were debates on the House floor. I don't think it's been debated on the Senate floor yet. No, it hasn't been debated on the Senate floor yet. On the House floor, I can either listen to or watch the full debate. And then we'll talk about legislative history toward the end of the hour, but that's pretty much all we're ever going to have by way of legislative history. So these recordings become very important. Okay, I'm going to click on this audio link here just kind of randomly to show you. I turned off the sound on my computer, so it's not going to start. But it will start here, and you'll be able to listen to the audio. What is written over here is just a summary of what happened during that particular hearing. Wow, I don't know what that bill was. House Bill 42, whatever it was, a whole lot of people testified about. Here's House Bill 89, the one we're interested in. All I'm getting here is a summary of who spoke and how long they spoke. So if I want to know what a particular person said, I can jump to that part in the audio. This doesn't give me any indication of what anybody said. Actually, all this really does give me on this particular bill is that there are no opponents to this bill. The committee had questions and some answers, but there are no opponents, which actually is kind of reflected in the vote as well. One thing when you are listening to this testimony is to pay particular attention to the opening statements by the sponsor, because that is usually where you will get the statement of here is what the purpose of this bill is, and here is why we are going to have this bill. And often, or why they're bringing the bill, and often you'll also get a summary of what the bill is going to do. So those opening statements are particularly important. The closing statements actually can also be important too. The closing statements often, as the sponsor is sitting there listening to the testimony and all of the questions, those closing statements are often an attempt to kind of redirect if necessary, especially for controversial bills. When it starts to be clear that maybe the committee's going one way and the sponsor doesn't like that, the sponsor will perhaps put in testimony to try and redirect, although in this bill I wouldn't have expected that since there are no opponents. Okay, let me close out of here for a second.
Is it true that the audios are not transcribed?
Yes, that is true. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about legislative history, but I think this is the 4th session now, the audio is not transcribed and there is no intent to ever transcribe the audio. If you want to hear me on my soapbox about that, there is an article I published. I think it's a right to know issue. That's probably enough said for now, but yeah, and I actually asked I called Legislative Services when I was writing the article and asked why they're not transcribed anymore, and I was fully expecting them to say because it costs too much. And I wasn't going to like that answer, but I was going to accept that answer. What they told me instead is, oh, because we can't find anybody to do it. That answer did not go over so well with me, because there's how many, transcriptionists that, we have court reporters, that's their job. But anyway, that's what they told me. So no, yeah, it is true. You have to, to be able to get the information about these hearings, you have to have a computer, you have to have the correct software. And what?
You have to be able to hear it.
And you have to be able to hear it because I discovered earlier, when I wanted to show one of these hearings in class, that they're not closed captioned. the videos. They should be. So I actually had to have our across campus, our IT department closed caption the video because they are not closed captioned either. Anyway, that's my that's probably enough of my soapbox for there, but I think it is unfortunate that that is our only access. On the one hand, I don't want to call it all bad. On the one hand, I think having the audio and video is very valuable because you can see body language and things like that, and sometimes watching those hearings is very interesting. But on the other hand, for posterity and future use, and the use of people who might be hearing impaired, it would be helpful if we also at some point had the written. Okay, so I wanted to point out one more. I'm going to go back to my bill screen here to point out one more thing. In each committee that the bill is in, it has a hearing, and that's what I just showed you was the audio for a hearing. And at the hearing, you have the opponents testify, and if the proponents testify, if there's any opponents, the members of the committee get to ask questions and get their answers. That happens all in the hearing. The committee then goes into executive action, and usually this is later, it's not usually the same day, goes into executive action, and this is where the committee discusses the bill and decides whether or not they are going to pass it out of committee or whether they are going to table it in committee. Usually if a bill is tabled in committee, it dies right there. There are ways to get bills off the table and get them to the full chamber, but that is not the common. Usually when it's tabled in committee, it dies. That executive action is important for you to be able to listen to that as well. It's an important part of what happened to this bill, because that's actually where you're going to get not necessarily what the opponents and the proponents said, but you're going to get what the legislators themselves said about here's why I'm not going to pass this bill. And occasionally, well, often, they actually say that. I'm going to vote no on this bill because. And that's where you get the debate. Okay. So I point that out to show you when I go to all available audio and video, although there is executive action on March 31st, there is no other executive action listed. This is actually kind of funny. Until last week, they did not put any executive action at all. And then I complained. And they said, oh, we didn't know that was important. We'll start adding it. So I'm thinking, geez, I should have complained in January. So now you will see the executive action, but for those earlier dates, the executive action, which is really important, is not listed in the all audio and video. So to get it, you kind of have to go through a back door, but it's possible. I hope they go back and add all of them. What you have to do is figure out when executive action is. So there was executive action in the House Judiciary Committee on February 6th. You then have to back up a step or two and go to the archives. And then you choose House, Judiciary, and it's going to pop up with all the available dates. If I go down to February 6th, there it is. You can back in and get it that way. But so for those where they don't list it, that's what you have to do, is go backwards a little bit. But it is there. And like I said, I definitely encourage you, if you're interested in what happened to a particular bill, to listen to that. Sorry.
But you get the entire video, the entire 3 hours.
Yeah, you do. You do. You get the whole thing, but you can
Insert the thing?
you can skip through, because you can tell from these where, that's 585, you can tell where a certain discussion is going to start. You can also, if we did it right, click down here and it will jump to that part of the audio or video. So you don't have to listen to the whole 3 hours to get one. The other thing about the executive action that's important is this is where bills are amended, is in executive action. So they can also be amended on the floor, But often they're amended here. So if you want to know why something is different than the way it was originally introduced, you need again to listen to the executive action. So that's why I was harping so much on the executive action and was kind of dismayed by the, oh, we didn't know it was important answer. You're the legislature, you should know. Okay. So, any questions up till this point? I know I talk fast, so. Okay, so what I started with was, if we go all the way back, I started with a section number that because I have that report, I knew that section had been amended. But that report is by section numbers. What about laws that are entirely new and are adding new sections that are not going to be reflected in that report? Because that report only shows things that amend sections. Unfortunately, there is no brand new laws report. That's another thing we've complained about, and that one we might get at the end of the year. We didn't complain early enough on that one. So how do you do that? How do you find then laws that are entirely new that are not reflected in that report? So I'm actually going to go, let's see, I have too many windows open. I'm going to close a couple things here. Okay, I'm going to go back to, this is the session information page, and this is where we look up our bill information. There are a couple other ways, in addition to knowing the bill numbers, that I can look up information. One of them is by subject. So every bill, when it's introduced, is assigned a subject, and this is almost like an index. You know, in the back of a book, you look up arts and antiquities, and it tells you what every page arts and antiquities is on. In this case, if I look up arts and antiquities, it tells me every bill that deals with arts and antiquities. So I'm going to go down to crimes and click on find. And click on find, and it's going to take it a little bit, but what it is going to pull back, it's searching through 1,100 introduced bills, plus all of the bills that were never introduced. And what it is going to pull back is just a list of bills, here we go, that are assigned to that topic, crimes. And I can see where they are. That first one there, House Bill 32, criminalize the misuse of official criminal justice information, became law on February 18th. The next one, revising laws regarding domestic violence and child abuse evidence, was tabled in the Senate Judiciary Committee on February 11th. So that's one way I can go through and get an idea of what has become law, even if it's a brand new law and is not reflected in that other report. And you see many of these, and this actually happens with a lot, many of these miss the transmittal deadline, which means they're dead. That they're dead. So that's one way. Another way, and that assumes that you're looking for all bills on a topic. Another way, though, is to use a keyword search. And say you are looking for all bills that have particular language in it. And I'm just going to, going with what we were looking at before, I want to make sure I didn't miss any trafficking bills. Here, if I look down here, I can see this is House Bill 89. This is the one that we looked at before, but there was also another one, House Bill 474. And so I want to look at that one now. If I click on it, it pulls up the bill itself, and if I go down, see this one was fairly short. If I go down to status, it's going to pull up this now familiar chart, and I can see that this one was actually tabled yesterday in the Senate Finance and Claims Committee. So this bill is probably, although not necessarily 100% dead, but is likely. So those are the other two ways, absent a report that says, here's all the brand new laws that aren't reflected yet, is doing it by topic or by keyword. One thing you can do, I'm going to go back, let's see if I can. By my topic report, one thing, this is probably something you would want to do a little earlier in the session, but one thing I do at the beginning of the session is pick topics I'm interested in and go through, and I establish a preference account. And what this allows you to do is just make a list of all the bills that you're interested in tracking, and then it notifies you when there's a hearing posted, or you can easily just go to those bills that you're interested in and not have to wade through all of the rest of the information that's on there. Okay, any questions? Nope. So I'm going to go back here a little bit. This, like I said, this looking up information, these two things at the top are the most important parts, looking up the bills and then the audio and video archives. Other important things though, and this goes to the question of where did I get the reports, is this reports link right here. And this is a list of all of the reports that are available. And these are updated often. That one that I just printed was updated earlier this morning, and then right before I printed it as well. So you can see here's a report of the bills that have gone into law without the governor's signature. Here's a report of the bills that the governor vetoed. This is that code sections affected, big long report I gave you. There's various things, calendars, the introduced bill statistics is that other one that I gave you. So none of these are beautiful looking reports, but depending on what you're looking for, they can be, they can actually be quite useful. If you're looking at who sponsors, you know, if you want to see all of the bills that were sponsored by a particular person, who requested bills, often state agencies will request bills. The Supreme Court requested one in this particular session. That's all reflected on those reports. So that reports link is where you get all of that information as you go through. And it is, as we'll look at later, all of this continues to be available. It's not going to go away after the session. It will all continue to be available into the future. I'm going to back up again to this page. This is the session page, just some other information that you might want to know that's available easily. The legislator information. This has a roster of all the legislators. There is actually a legislator lookup so that you can put in your address and it will tell you who your senator or representatives are. And then there's also an easy way to, if you are concerned about one of these bills, to contact the legislature using a really easy online form. You just type in your information and a message down here. And actually, you don't even have to type a message. If you want to encourage a particular senator or representative or a whole committee to vote or not vote for a bill, all you actually have to do is put in your bill number and say, vote against or vote for. And what they get is a piece of paper that says vote against or vote for, and they end up with 2 stacks. And, so it's very easy, actually. They make it really easy to, if you're interested in a bill, to contact and make sure your voice is heard in the legislative process. In other words, the only thing about this is it's limited to 1,250 characters, and apparently I'm really wordy and can't write anything in 1,250 characters. But yeah, so I've done a lot of editing this legislative session because I cannot write in 1,250 characters. If you're interested in Senate rules, House rules, all of those, that kind of information is on this page. So it's kind of everything is here. Okay, so, and the other, so if I go back one more page, kind of the other part that you may want to keep an eye on is just the session calendar. This kind of gives you an idea of when various deadlines are, so you know. This one is where I found out that, this is where I found out that today's the 70th day and that the last day is going to be day 90, but if you're actually doing legislative work, this calendar also gives you all of the deadlines you need to be aware of. Okay, so that's current legislative stuff. What if what you want is legislative history of a bill that was passed or a law that was passed in a previous session? Let's start with a statute. This is actually one of the statutes, the trafficking statutes, that if House Bill 89 passes, this statute will be repealed because it's actually going to be replaced with something else, is what the bill does. But, so let's say I'm interested in this, and I want to know originally why did they pass it? Maybe I want to know if particular language in here, why they added particular language or what particular language might mean. I'm looking for legislative intent, essentially. And we talk about legislative history. We say, oh, I'm going to get the legislative history for this law. What we really want usually is not the whole legislative history, which would include all of the amendments and who voted and everywhere that every step the bill took along the way. What we're really after is legislative intent. But we need documents that are in the legislative history to get at that intent. In Montana, really the only thing we have to get at that legislative intent are the minutes, and I use air quotes purposely because, as we've already seen, they're not even written minutes, are the minutes from those hearings and executive action. And of less importance, but some importance, are the debates on the House and Senate floor. So that's what we're looking for when we're talking about doing, compiling a legislative history to get at that legislative intent. So the first piece of information we need to know is actually on the statute itself. And it's down here in the history. This history tells me that this particular statute was enacted in 2007 in Chapter 147. And a chapter is analogous to a public law number, to a federal public law number. We just call them chapter numbers. It was also amended later in 2013, but for now, I'm interested in originally why they passed this bill. So I want to look at the documents for 2007. So that chapter number is the important part, Chapter 147. And with that information, I'm going to go all the way back to the legislature's page, and I just link off the website or type it in. And now, instead of using the current session information, I'm going to go to past sessions, and I'm going to choose 2007. Now, the funny thing is that each of these pages for the previous session look a little bit different. They have the same general information, but it's in different order. They kind of play with it every year, but you're always looking for this laws database, and that is most often at the top. And now it looks really familiar. We did it same as before. I have a chapter number this time, so I'm going to type that in and get that same kind of chart that I had. Notice for here there's no audio links at all. This was before they started adding the links to the audio, so I'm going to have to figure out where that audio is myself. So what I'm going to do is, actually I'll start at the bottom, and look for every time there was a hearing, and I need to record the committee that had the hearing, the Senate Judiciary in this case, and the date. And I'm also going to do that for executive action, and then again in the House. So I'm going to write all those down. I'm going to write them down because I've learned that even if I think I can remember all of that, I can't. And I back up a step and think, yeah, I forgot all that. So write those down, which I did. And then back up in 2 steps. And this is the same thing we did before when we looked for the executive action. I'm going to go to those archives. And my first hearing was in the Senate Judiciary Committee on, scroll down a little here, February 6th. So I'm just going to scroll down to, it's March. February 6th, and in this case I have both audio and video available to me. The Judiciary committees generally do have both audio and video. I'm going to expand this a little bit. And you will see again what I have are these, kind of summary minutes. On these, if I click on the exhibit, I will actually get a copy of the exhibit. So one thing that happens is that exhibits are kind of like handouts. A witness gets up and says, "Can I introduce this exhibit?" And it could be anything. It could be a report, it could be a newspaper article, it could be a letter, and it gets put in as an exhibit. And those exhibits are all available on kind of that summary. So for this older statute, I am going to have to do the same thing and listen. If I go back, yeah.
How far back does the audio go?
They go back, so audio and video are available back to, or audio at least is available, I'm not sure about video, back to 99. But, actually that's a good segue. Let's go back to 99 because I want to show you one other thing. If I go to 99, see this page looks different like I said. I'm looking for committee minutes. Go to, I'm just going to pick a Senate committee here. We'll pick Senate Judiciary. And I'm just picking a random date here just to kind of give you an example. Back that far, they still had summarized minutes. Now, this is not a transcription. It is a summary. So at least, I want to say this is the fourth session. They have not had any of these. But going back a ways, you will get these actual summaries of the minutes so that you don't have to listen. This is much faster.
Well, as far as, say, brief writing, and how accurate are these?
Well, okay, that's a funny question. Because that same person who told me that they can't find anybody to transcribe the things anymore also told me that they were not sure how accurate these were. That maybe sometimes the people doing them editorialized. And I thought, oh great, that means none of my legislative history, I can't rely on any of it. But in reality, we do rely on it. And we use it all the time. I kind of have a feeling that person probably wasn't supposed to tell me that. And I don't know if that's actually the official position or if it was that person's opinion. But yeah, so there's always that doubt, but it's all we've got. In fact, when you go back this far, sometimes the audio's not even available. It's very, what is available kind of changes from time to time. If I go to House committees for the same year, I'm just going to choose House Judiciary now, and they did not. That same year, the House didn't, the Senate did.
I served back during that time, and it was great because the House, for about a 4-year period, decided they couldn't afford to do the minutes. They would just do the summary.
Yeah.
And so we in the Senate knew that we could determine legislative intent because there was nothing on the House or Senate floor
Right.
that was being recorded. So if we wanted to make sure on a controversial bill or whatever, we'd make sure, we'd read those minutes.
Good.
To make sure that it was the absolute intent of the Senate.
Right.
We could care less about the House, whatever it is, as to what we determined. And
Yeah.
so it was great that they decided that they weren't going to do it because we knew we could determine that.
And at one point, a couple of, in fact, my former boss made the argument to the legislature that, if you don't transcribe this, the court is going to have to decide what you meant. And that worked for a little while too. So the funny thing about these is, it gives you on the tapes where you can listen. You can call the Historical Society, which is the state archives, and they'll send you the tapes. And I'm not kidding. It's a tape. I took this one to Ed and I said, Ed, do we have anything to play this on? It's a tape. Actually, the new ones are now on CD, but this one is from '95, I think, and so they literally sent me a cassette tape. Yeah, so, okay. So, yeah, this goes back, and now, if we look, if I go to past sessions, you'll see the online materials, they actually, it says 1997, but really the online materials only go back to 1999. In 1997, everything was on, they did a CD, which we have here in the library. It actually uses a program that is unreadable to many computers now, but we turned it into a format that we can use. So if you need a 1997 hearing, they actually were all summarized then, so we can get you one in print for 1997. Before that, there were those kind of summarized written minutes. We have them on microfiche here in the library. They only go back to 1989 though. We have a microfiche reader up there. We can help you figure out how to figure out what you're looking at, but they do only go back to 1989. Before that, you have to either call the State Law Library or go to the Montana Historical Society. And they have a research center, and if you go to services, and then research requests, and then down to legislative research, you can actually submit a request online, and it costs $25, and they will copy all of the documents. Now, what you'll get when you do this kind of request is you'll get the full legislative history. So you'll get all the amendments and all of the voting records and all of those minutes. You'll get all of those as well. So you'll get the full for the $25 of whatever happened in both the House and the Senate. So, yeah, so before 1989, we cannot do it at all here in our law library. And we just either send people here to the State Law Library. The State Law Library, if it's one that they have already compiled, will just charge you the copying costs. If it's one they have not yet compiled, they have to go across the street to the State Archives, and it may take a little while. So it's not always, doing it this way is not always going to be a quick thing. You could go to Helena and do it yourself too, though, which also would not necessarily be quick or cheap. But yeah, so, wow, the past 2 times I've gone over and I actually don't have anything else, but are there any questions?
Do you have any compiled here?
Not, sort of. Yes, we have about maybe a dozen that students have requested. And we pay for them for students, so I keep a copy, but they're completely random. They're just things based on what students have been working on, so it's possible. Sometimes if somebody asks me for one, I say, well, let me look and see if we have it. It's never happened. We've actually had it, except there is one, and it's a really long one, something to do with water. I think the Water Quality Act. I compiled that for a faculty member. I didn't compile it. I paid for them to compile it for a faculty member, and that's the one that gets used fairly often. They're also, I should point out, basically what they're doing is photocopying documents that may or may not have been terribly legible in the first place. So it's not always. Yeah. So we have. How many do you think we have? Have you?
About a dozen.
Yeah, not many.
They used to not charge at the State Law Library. It's the best service around.
Yeah, they did, and now they actually, if it's one they have, they just charge copying costs. And I don't know what they charge if it's one they don't have. They still may just charge copying costs to recoup that. And I'm not sure, because at least when they send them to me, they don't send them to me in paper. So I don't know what they really base their fee on now.
So, but otherwise, absolutely everything that's at the State Law Library is online up to from 1999 up?
Well, I'm not going to say absolutely, but I think so. Yeah. And the reason I hesitate is there might be a couple years in there where the exhibits are there but hard to find. But one thing I do have is I got the State Law Library to give me CDs of all of the exhibits. So that's something I have too. So if you can't find an exhibit, just give me a call. I can look up the exhibits. Yeah. Anything else? Questions, comments? Well, great, thank you.
Thanks, Susan.